What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and on this channel, we subscribe to the idea of avoiding the running back dead zone in rounds 4 through 6 and prioritizing wide receivers, tight ends, and quarterbacks in this range. Even in 2024, where running backs in your home leagues are going as late as ever, we still proved last week in our draft strategy video that the running back dead zone still exists because you are getting as good of running back options as ever later in drafts, where running backs are falling down boards and we are getting really good options around 7, 8, and 9, which has been, historically speaking, an RB money zone, as I've called it, where if we look at advancement rates over the last 3 years in underdog drafts, round 7 on has been a gold mine for advancement rates at the running back position. And last year, we actually spotted the two big league winners in this range. In this exact video title from last year, we spotted Alvin Kamara and Devon Achane as league winners going in this range. So today, we are going to talk through my 6 must-have running backs going outside of the top 6 rounds in fantasy football that you're drafting in this money range and that I think can end up being an RB1 in fantasy football. So with all that being said, if you enjoy, make sure down below, subscribe, leave a like, let's go. Ice cold, ice around my body like I'm frozen. Now, the first running back we're going to talk through here is Rhamondre Stevenson, and he's right on the fringes, all right? He's going at the 7-10 as the RB21 over on Underdog. In your home league, he's more of a 6-7 turn guy, where I think that his ADP on Sleeper right now is pick 70, so that's the 6-10. Anytime he gets there to like the 701, 702, 703, I think he is an absolute smash pick there. He is somebody that the Patriots have really prioritized. They made him the 6th highest average salary running back in all of the NFL, which is pretty crazy. He had $17 million guaranteed, 7th in the NFL, all huge numbers for a running back. He ended up getting a 4-year, $36 million contract. They really like this guy, and for fantasy football, he has what we want. He has pass-catching upside, he has size, and we have already seen him hit an RB10 point per game season in 2022, and over his last 2 seasons, he has been top 12 in target share. So he has the upside that we want in terms of receiving. He's already done it in the past, and if he can recapture the efficiency he saw in 2022, we could be really cooking here. This is a guy in 2022 that was 11th in PFF rushing grade, 3rd in yards after contact per attempt, 3rd in missed tackles forced per touch, 10th in rushing yards over expected per attempt, and we know efficiency bounces all over the place. We saw in 2022 Josh Jacobs be one of the best running backs in the NFL, then last year, steep decline. But the opposite can be true. You can sort of fall off in a given year and then spike back up in terms of efficiency, as long as you're not old and washed up. And Rhamondre Stevenson at 26, I don't think that's really in the conversation just yet. So we know he has a really good skill set in terms of pass catching upside, in terms of being a goal line back and having a ton of size as like a 220 plus pound back. I want to say he's more like 230, really big dude, kind of like a Najee Harris type of guy. And I'm really excited about what he can do in this system with Alex Van Pelt. He is the Cleveland offensive coordinator. He came from Cleveland to the Patriots to call plays here. And this is a really good shout by Jacob Gibbs on Twitter. Rhamondre Stevenson has been much better as a man gap rusher, both in college and as a pro. If you look at what he did at Oklahoma, 8.4 yards per carry in man/gap, 6.4 yards per carry on zone runs. On the Patriots, same deal, better in man and gap schemes versus zone schemes. So Alex Van Pelt is going to bring all of those man gap schemes to the running game, and that should really help Rhamondre Stevenson. Now, our second running back we'll talk about here is a guy we've talked about a lot this offseason, Jaylen Warren. He's going as the 803 as the RB23 on Underdog, and I will say, I think you can actually get him cheaper than that in your home league. Like on ESPN and Sleeper, he's much more of a guy that you can draft at the 9-10 turn, and he's an absolute smash there. Despite splitting a backfield last year with Najee Harris, and it was a really bad offense with Kenny Pickett, and Matt Canada was atrocious, he was still the RB29 in points per game and showed a lot of upside. He was top 5 in running back targets. This is a good tweet from David Gattiari where he sort of highlights here that every running back with 50 or more broken tackles last year had 200 or more rush attempts. Besides Jaylen Warren, he broke 53 tackles on 149 rush attempts, which is just absolutely bonkers. And he was a top 5 running back in targets, which is beautiful. He's efficient. He was top 5 in missed tackles forced per touch last year, 3rd in rushing yards over expected per attempt last year. This is a guy who's good at football, has pass catching upside, super efficient, super explosive, everything we could possibly want. Now, he is splitting a backfield with Najee Harris, but there should be a good chunk of volume to go around as Arthur Smith comes to this backfield, where last year, Pittsburgh was still like a top 10 team in terms of usage going to the running backs. This is a good chart by Hayden Winks. outlining running back usage by team, just going by expected fantasy points per game, which is just simply your rushes, your targets, your red zone opportunities. And Arthur Smith is coming over as a guy who was between Detroit and Miami in terms of running back usage, with second most in the NFL, which we know on Detroit and Miami, both teams had top, I want to say like 100% top 24 point per game runners. I think the worst guy among Raheem Mostert, Jahmyr Gibbs, Montgomery, and Achane was Montgomery, who I want to say finishes a top 12 back, and if he didn't, he was like top 15. So there's going to be plenty of usage to go around. And Arthur Smith, even though he's a pretty brutal head coach, as a play caller, he's been great. When you just let him cook in the run game, he can figure something out and get efficiency out of his running game. Now, they also have revamped the offensive line. They draft Zach Frazier. They draft Fatanu, using both of their first 2 picks on offensive line. Everything should bounce back here. I think Jaylen Warren will be in the mix as an RB2. And then if Najee was to go down, or if Najee was super inefficient and Jaylen Warren was to beat him out, then we're talking about a guy who's flirting with RB1 type of numbers. And when we see a guy like Jaylen Warren, who is this talented in what should be a really good rushing environment with Arthur Smith, I want pieces of that. Now, the third running back we're going to talk about here is not for the faint of heart. This is Jonathon Brooks. He's going at the 808 as the RB25 on Underdog. I think he's like Jaylen Warren. Well, he'll be much cheaper in your home leagues. I want to say, I just got him in my high stakes draft on Sunday night in the middle of the 9th round. I think especially like he's going to be a guy. He has like a dual threat like value glitch here, where I think that he's going to be pushed down boards because of his ACL injury, and he's also going to be pushed down boards because nobody really knows rookies, right? We know Marvin Harrison Jr., we know Malik Neighbors, but Todd from accounting or your cousin or whatever, whoever's in your home league, you're going to need some top-tier ball knowledge to know who Jonathon Brooks is. Like, he only played like 9 weeks in college last year. Before that, it was Bijan. Like, you have to have your head in the weeds to pick up on Jonathon Brooks. Now, of course, the big holdup here is he tears his ACL. Now, I do want to throw out a big fat disclaimer that if you draft Jonathon Brooks, he cannot be, like, you can't draft him under the assumption that you're going to put him in your RB2 spot in week 1. This is a guy you draft in like round 9 or 10 after you've drafted 2 running backs up top. Like, I drafted on Sunday, I took Breece Hall, I took Devon Achane, and then I took Jonathon Brooks, a guy that I'm not going to have to worry about until later on in the season unless something goes horribly wrong. Now, he can also be a guy that you draft as like your RB2 in a hero RB build, and you draft guys like Devin Singletary or Zeke Elliott or Jerome Ford that you can stick in the RB2 spot early on in the season. Now, in terms of what to expect for Jonathon Brooks off of an ACL tear, right now, there is a lot of people panicking on Jonathon Brooks. And that's why I think it's a perfect opportunity to be drafting him, because we just got a report that Brooks is going to be ready close to week 3 or week 4. So now he's not on the timeline to be ready by week 1. Hayden Winks tweets here that if he's not activated off of the PUP by August 27th, he will be out weeks 1 through 4 at minimum. And they don't seem in a huge rush to get him on the field. Now, we have an injury expert, Edwin Porras, here saying Gurley was on the same timeline as a rookie. He missed week 1, was worked in week 2, could still be the case for Brooks. Now, of course, Jonathon Brooks is not the same prospect that Todd Gurley was. He's not as good as Todd Gurley was, but like a Todd Gurley light season, or maybe like 75% of what Todd Gurley was as a rookie, would still be a home run pick for Jonathon Brooks. Now, we also have to remember these rookie running backs backload their production. If you remember, Jonathan Taylor was unstartable for like the first 8 weeks of his rookie year, and then was like an 18-plus point per game guy down the stretch. Same thing with Jahmyr Gibbs last year. I had people in my comment section coming at my throat because I had Jahmyr Gibbs as a guy you needed to draft last year. In weeks 1 through 6, he was unstartable. He was at 9.7 points per game, like not even inside the top 30 running backs in points per game. But then from week 7 on, he erupted at 18.5 points per game. And that's kind of what I think that we can expect from Jonathon Brooks, where if he's out there week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, you're not going to be starting him. He's someone that's going to collect dust on your bench, and you're not really going to worry about him until weeks 7, 8, 9, 10. And that feels like a long time to wait on a guy. But if we're talking about someone that can be a true late season league winner, playoff hammer, that is a massive edge over your opponents. If you can get somebody that where, you get into the playoffs on the same merit as everybody else, and then all of a sudden you get a running back out of nowhere who's absolutely crushing, that could be what puts you over the top in a given year. So I do think that it is worth drafting him and prioritizing him. If we talk about guys off of ACLs, last year we had Breece Hall off an ACL. He was drafted inside the top 5 rounds. Javonte still a top 10 round pick. Now, of course, Breece smashed. Javonte did not. there's a wide range of outcomes for Jonathon Brooks, but we also don't know if he's good or not, and we also know that he's very young, and Javonte had a multi-ligament tear. Brooks just has a very clean ACL tear that's not going to be as brutal to come back from, like we've seen from J.K. Dobbins and Javonte Williams in the past. Now, of course, I show this every time I talk about a Panther, but the Panther offense is one that has huge bounce-back potential. If we look at per-attempt efficiency for quarterbacks before and after getting Dave Canales, in a tweet by Ryan Heath here, pretty much every time the efficiency goes up. Bryce Young was awful last year, but I do think that this is an offense that can take a step forward. They've invested in the offensive line. They got Robert Hunt. They have Dave Canales. We just saw Dave Canales give Rachaad White the 4th most weighted opportunities in the NFL last year. It's just not all that wild to me for a running back competing with Chuba Hubbard and Miles Sanders, 2 guys that have never been all that good, that by week 7, 8, 9, 10, he sort of gets the workload, takes it from those guys. This is a guy that in a league that, running backs get drafted later. Jonathan Taylor, one of the best prospects ever, was drafted in the 2nd round. Jonathon Brooks was a top 50 pick last year. Even with the ACL tear, probably would have been a 1st-round pick without the ACL tear. So that's the kind of talent we're talking about here. And he has it all. He is 6 foot, 215 pounds. He just turned 21 July 21st, so he has the youth going for him. And he also has a ton of pass-catching upside. This is somebody that if we look at the 2nd-round running back picks in my database, he has the 4th highest receiving fantasy points per snap, behind just James Cook, Joe Mixon, DeAndre Swift. He's ahead of guys like Breece Hall and ahead of guys like Jonathan Taylor in terms of receiving usage at the college level, and still really good size, really good draft capital for Jonathon Brooks. It is all there in front of him. Again, you cannot just draft him willy-nilly. You need to have some kind of plan there. You have to have some kind of pretty ugly running back to hold the RB2 spot down while Brooks is hurt. But if you can get him late, like round 9, 10 in your home league, I think that he is somebody that you could be really thankful for drafting, where you look back in December or late November and you're like, man, I got John Brooks in round 10, and now he's just absolutely crushing down the stretch and could be the reason that I win my home league. Now, our 4th running back here, someone I'm starting to come around on. All right, this is not a guy that I've liked in years past, but Brian Robinson. He's went to 908 as the RB30 on Underdog. That's roughly where he's going as well in home leagues. And this is somebody that I think gets a bad rap for what he did last year. He's going RB30. I get Eckler just got signed there, and we'll get to that in a second. But when we just contextualize what Brian Robinson did last year, it was pretty damn good. He was the RB22 in points per game. His FPOE per game, so fantasy points over expected per game, just based on your expected points per game, based on your carries, your targets, your red zone opportunities, how much did you supersede that? I mean, 2.2 FPOE per game is really, really good. When we did the legendary running back video the other day, we're looking for 2.5 plus to get there. So he showed almost damn near that kind of efficiency, which is huge last year in what was a pretty brutal offense with Sam Howell. 21st in rushing yards over expected per attempt, 16th in success rate. So he's very steady. He's good. He gives you positive runs. His yards per out run was 5th in the NFL last year, which is crazy. And he had 40 targets, 28th. So he's seen as this between the tackles grinder, but he's not a complete zero in the passing game. Now, of course, Eckler's there. I'm not saying that Brian Robinson's going to come out here and get 100 catches in a given season. I'm just saying not a complete zero. He had 28 catches last year, really efficient in terms of yards per out run, and I expect that to stay the same. We're talking about Eckler, old, was pretty dusted up last year, and even then, Brian Robinson was the RB22 in points per game last year, even with Eckler, or even with Antonio Gibson taking 46% of the snaps, 47% of the routes, 80% of long down and distance snaps, and 60% of the 2-minute drill. I think those are all going to go right to Eckler, and that's completely fine. We don't need Brian Robinson to be an all-purpose 25-plus touch per game back. We just need him to look like what he did last year, and that's not all that crazy to think. Now, we also get Cliff Kingsbury in the mix, and he is somebody that, historically speaking, over his 4 years in Arizona, ran the ball a ton in close. He ranked over those 4 years 3rd in rushing touchdowns, 4th in rushing touchdowns, 7th, and then 16th. Never finishing in the bottom half of the NFL in rushing touchdowns over those years. Now, if we look at individually, he had a 15 rushing touchdown year for James Conner, 10 for Kenyon Drake, 8 for Kenyon Drake, 7 for James Conner. Now, you do have that 1 of 11 for Kyler Murray, and that might scare people off of well, now they have Jaden Daniels. What if he's a double-digit touchdown guy? But what I would say is that Kyler was there for all 4 years, and only 1 year did he have more than 5 rushing touchdowns in a given season. To me, that's an outlier. Now, even so, Jaden Daniels is a guy who's very skinny. He's 6'4", 205 pounds soaking wet. I don't know what he weighed in at the combine, but he plays really thin, and he wasn't much of a goal line threat. Now, he did have 34 rushing touchdowns in his college career, but that was on 617 rush attempts. If we look at a guy like Caleb Williams, much more of a goal line rusher and a bigger quarterback, he had 27 rushing touchdowns on 289 rush attempts. So that's a matter of like, what, less than half the amount of rush attempts as Jayden Daniels, and only 7 rushing touchdowns away. So Jayden Daniels is somebody that he can score, but he's more electric like Lamar Jackson than he is like a Josh Allen, where he's going to be a goal line back. So I do think that Brian Robinson has the upside for all the goal line looks, the between the tackle stuff, a decent little, a sprinkle of receiving work. We got 40 targets last year. And then also when we look at the projections by Mike Clay and we see the weighted opportunities per game, so that's just your carries and your targets are weighted higher than carries because receptions matter more in PPR. Brian Robinson is right there as the RB22 in weighted opportunities per game, which we're drafting in the RB30s. That's pretty good. You're getting volume. You're getting rushing touchdown equity. It's all there for him. Again, it's not like the sexiest pick of all time, but he is like a very good, like boring RB2. You put him in the RB2 spot, I'm fairly certain that he's going to flirt with RB2 numbers the entire year and be somebody you can start on a regular basis. Now, our 5th running back we're going to talk about here, Chase Brown. He is going as the 9-11 as the RB31. We talked about him like a month ago, and he's skyrocketed in price ever since then, but I'm still drafting him. He is getting all of the positive news in the world. I actually wanted to address this. We got a report yesterday, or like a couple days ago, that Zach Moss is the RB1 on the depth chart. I don't take depth charts all that seriously. I want to say like Jarrett Stidham is the QB1 right now on the Broncos depth chart. An August 1st, 2nd, 3rd, whatever depth chart made by some intern in the organization really doesn't hold a ton of weight for me. I want to say Devon Achane was like RB4 on the depth chart this time last year. I just don't care a ton. I care about much more what's happening in practice and what the beat reporters are seeing with their eyes, more than like what the teams are self-reporting in terms of depth charts, if that makes sense. And we have a report from a couple weeks ago where Chase Brown continues to take the majority of reps at RB with the ones. He's getting a lot of work with the ones. He's looking very good, and this is a guy that I want to be targeting. He is in a good offense with a good offensive line, right? They've now invested in them. And we also have a good quote recently from Zach Taylor. Shout out to Coach Speak Index. He absolutely crushes it. And Zach Taylor said the other day, consistency. Chase has been very consistent, and that's what we're counting on from him. He didn't get a ton of opportunity last year, and so now is the first time he's really getting a bunch of reps, and I like how consistent he's been and dependable he's been. Taylor talking of Brown's pass protection and lack of errors is huge because we want that third down role. We want him out there on third downs, the pass catching role. If you can get that, then we are really cooking here. This is somebody that runs in the 4.4, somebody that clocked the fastest mile per hour tracked ball carrier speed last year. And this is somebody that's competing with Zach Moss, who did get paid, sure, but Zach Moss has never finished as a top 24 point per game running back, and he's never had over 1,000 rushing yards. He is not a massive, massive hurdle to clear for a guy like Chase Brown, and Chase Brown actually handled a really big load in college where he had multiple games of 25 plus touches. I believe he had like 12 games of 25 or more touches. He is built to handle the workload. He is built to be the explosive outlet in this passing game. And to me, that's very exciting and somebody that I will take swings on every time in the 9th round. Now, we have our last running back here. And if I'm being completely honest with you guys, this was the entire reason that I wanted to make this video. And I was debating actually making a separate single running back video for him. But I think in this new era of YouTube, people kind of prefer me talking through a bunch of players instead of gushing over one for 12 minutes or whatever. But if I was to do another, the cheapest league-winning running back series video for 2024, it would be Javonte Williams. DeAndre Swift ended up being all right last year. Before that, Breece Hall, before the ACL tear, was a pretty good shout as well. And then this year, I'm putting my stamp of approval on Javonte Williams. This is a guy who came out of college as a really, really strong prospect. He then had one of the nuttiest missed tackles forced per rush seasons ever. I want to say it might be the best charted by PFF ever. Over those first 2 years, he was kind of a monster on the ground, where he had 4.4 yards per carry, 0.06 rushing yards over expected per attempt, 3.43 yards with the contact per attempt, 12.8% explosive rush percentage, and then that missed tackles forced per rush number is just bonkers, 31.6%. Now, also a really good elusiveness rating. Then he tears his ACL, and everything falls off a cliff in 2023, but we have to remember running backs after an ACL tear are usually much worse. But this is actually a great tweet by Edwin Porras. Javonte Williams, in terms of 2022 to 2023, everything fell off a cliff, but he did some research on ACL tears for running backs since 2011. We look at year 2 post-op. So this would be, right, last year was year 1. This is now year 2 for Javonte. And we usually see a plus 17% increase in missed tackles forced per attempt, plus 9% in yards created per attempt, plus 39% in receptions per game. Javonte could be in store for a huge bounce back here. And the reason that he could have had a brutal year last year is because he had a multi-ligament ACL tear. Like Breece Hall's was very clean. Javonte's wasn't just an ACL. There was a bunch of stuff wrong there, and that's really hard to bounce back from. Now, we want to be targeting murky backfields, and that's what Javonte Williams is in Denver, where you have Jaleel McLaughlin, you have Audric Estime. Is Samaje Perine going to be in this backfield? And that's what's pushing his price down. And we've seen, especially last year, that's how we had prices where you could get any Miami running back outside of the top 8 rounds last year. We saw with Detroit, David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs, both priced up, both kind of ambiguous of who's going to be the RB1. Both of them did great. Jets, same thing, where Breece Hall was pushed down because Dalvin Cook was in the mix, and Breece Hall crushed. Kind of like we said he would. Now, with Javonte Williams, we want to be going towards the ambiguity. I know it's murky. I know there's a lot of heads in this backfield, but the price is already baked in. Javonte right now is a guy who's going 10-11, RB34 on underdog. I want to say in your home league, it'll probably be more like a 9-10 turn pick, and I'm still smashing him there because he showed rushing efficiency pre-ACL tear. And then last year, he finished 11th among running backs in target share with 13%, so he can catch passes, and he had an absurd targets per out run, which I'll put my hand up. It's a little bit attributed to Sean Payton and how much he uses running backs, but that should sell you on Javonte even more. But he had the highest among all running backs with 50 or more targets. He was the only guy alongside Alvin Kamara to clear 30% target per out run, which is just bonkers. That's insane. 30%, getting a target on 32% of your routes is just bonkers stuff. And this is a backfield you want to target because Sean Payton gives a lot of usage to these running backs. Where if you look at that chart from earlier, the Broncos were the 6th highest team in terms of running back usage to their running backs, or fantasy usage to their running backs. And then if we look at high value touches from Sam Hoppen, which is just your inside the 5 carries and your targets, they had the highest team high value touches through week 16 last year to the running back position. Now, where the really big upside is here, on top of Javonte making huge strides and bouncing back from that ACL tear, is the idea that Samaje Perine could be gone. And this was a really annoying 3-way split last year where Samaje Perine saw 35% of the routes, 67% of the long down and distance, and 78% of the 2-minute drill snaps. Now, this is a really cool tool by Fantasy Life where you can look through player usage. We really want those passing down snaps. The long down and distance is your 3rd down. Your 2-minute drill, self-explanatory. That's where a lot of targets happen for running backs. And if Samaje Perine was to go, then that would be huge for Javonte because, yes, we do like Jaleel McLaughlin, but this is a guy who's 5'7", under 190 pounds, and that's just not going to be a guy that Sean Payton trusts as his passing down back. We saw last year, Samaje Perine led this team in pass blocking snaps. Javonte was a very close second, and then Jaleel McLaughlin had just 6 pass blocking snaps last year. So he profiles more as what Ben Albright here, a pretty famous Broncos beat reporter, describes as like a Darren Sproles 10-touch type of guy. So not really much of like a 3rd down specialist, but more of like this gadgety, manufactured touch guy that's going to come in here. And then he identifies Javonte as the primary back with a 50 to 55% target touch market share. Estime could be the early down guy. And then Samaje Perine is the guy right now who's the favorite to get cut because teams usually only hold 3 running backs at a time. And if that happens, it's wheels up for Javonte. Now, this was July 24th. The guy replying to this says, how has Javonte looked this spring and summer? Benjamin Albright said he looked great today. So if we can get to a spot where Javonte takes some of those long down and distance 2-minute drill snaps and he's this all-purpose, target hog, goal line back, where he gets like 60% of the work, we're talking about a guy who is a very easy top 24 running back with RB1 upside. And yes, Audric Estime is there, but if Javonte's efficient enough, he's going to keep Estime to the side as a day 3 pick that'll just here and there get some change of pace touches between the 20s and won't be all that annoying. The way that he gets a path to upside Estime is with a Javonte injury or if Javonte is inefficient next year, which if you're drafting Javonte, you're betting for the bounce back. So I think it's all there for Javonte. To me, he is like the smash must-draft running back this year in that round 9 to 10 area. Just pretend that this last part of the video was like a cheapest league-winning running back in 2024 because I do think like he is that guy for me in 2024. Now, that's going to do it for us today. As always, make sure you check out Underdog Fantasy. That's where we shouted out all of those values. Running back is going as late as ever on there if you want to scoop up all of your Alvin Kamaras and your Rashad Whites in like round 6, 7, 8. You can find that in the description or the comment section down below. Use promo code Rondo, match your first deposit up to $250. And if you want my rankings where I'm prioritizing all of these money zone backs and pushing them up over your, I mean, I should have touched on this at the beginning of the video, but you want to be prioritizing those money zone backs, those green zone backs over your like Jameson Williams and your Cortland Suttons and Josh Palmers and Rashid Shaheeds. Who else is in that range? Like Mike Williams, Jahan Dotson, all of those guys. I'm hammering running backs in that range. So you can find that patreon.com/Ron Stewart. I have that sort of set up in that way where I'm pushing up these running backs into round 7, pushing down those wide receiver profiles, because if you follow my rankings, you're already drafting the good wide receivers from like round 1 through 6 so that you can load up on these running backs later. Now, if you can't support me there, just leave a like, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one.
Stones, like this froze, ice cold, oh, oh.